Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Be Like Christ. Welcome to our Bible study in Nehemiah chapter 6. The real challenge today is going to be to see whether or not I can avoid swapping Ezra's name with Nehemiah, which has been a problem for me in these videos. And also when I type my notes, I do the same thing. And I don't know why, but I think in the last video I said that today's chapter was going to be Ezra 6. It's not. It's Nehemiah 6. What's going to be really tricky is when we get to chapter 8 and Ezra actually reappears in the book of Nehemiah. Then I'm going to confuse you all. Let's take a look at our PDF for this chapter. Ezra arrives in... I just did it. It's a disease. It's an addiction. I can't quit, and I don't know why. Nehemiah arrives in Jerusalem in about 444 BC, and not even a year has passed since his arrival, and we've been doing all these rebuilding of the walls of Jerusalem and things like that, but actually not even 6 months has passed since he arrived in Jerusalem. And so we'll talk about just how long it took for him to complete those walls and his men to complete those walls in the future text. Our key characters today: Nehemiah. Nehemiah was the former Jewish cupbearer to the king of Persia, and he was rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem with the help of the people, the Jews, and he was appointed the governor of Judah. So he's in a high position. We are going to, of course, talk about his countrymen, the Jews who are helping him, and also Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem. Boo. We don't like them. They're the enemies of Nehemiah and the people of Jerusalem. They're trying to hinder the building project that the Jews have undertaken. Where is this rebuilding happening and Nehemiah's story playing out? Well, it's taking place in Jerusalem, which was the capital of Judah. Okay, so now over to page number 2. Our first section is going to be blackmail and bribery, verses 1 through 14. When Sanballat, Tobiah, and their friend Geshem heard that the walls of Jerusalem were almost complete, they took another tactic. They sent messengers to Nehemiah asking him to meet with them, perhaps under the pretense of, becoming friends and setting aside their differences. But Nehemiah saw through this deception, and indeed he knew that their true intention was to do him harm, maybe to kill him or capture him, hold him as their prisoner, throw him in jail. They sent messengers to him 4 times, but every time Nehemiah rejected the invitation. On the 5th time, they realized their tactic wasn't working, and they basically tried to blackmail Nehemiah. They said, "Hey, Nehemiah, if you don't comply with our requests, we are going to write to the king of Persia and tell him that you are planning to rebel." Right? We've seen that tactic before. You're going to rebel, and that you're building up the city of Jerusalem to rebel, and that you plan to make yourself the king of Jerusalem. And they even accused him of setting up essentially false prophets in Jerusalem to promote this idea. Nehemiah wrote back to them and just flatly told them that they were inventing lies. He knew that they were trying to frighten him to stop working, but God continued to give him strength, and he continued working. Sometime after these events, Nehemiah visited a prophet named Shemaiah, and Shemaiah advised Nehemiah to do something interesting. He said, "Go into the temple and hide in the temple because Sanballat and Tobiah, they want to kill you, so go hide in the temple." Well, Nehemiah, first of all, he wasn't a coward. He wasn't going to hide from his enemies. He hadn't hid this whole time. And also, he wasn't allowed to hide in the temple because he's not allowed to enter into God's holy place. And so he refuses to heed Shemaiah's advice. And it turns out that he finds out that Shemaiah actually had been paid off by Sanballat and Tobiah, and he was trying to get Nehemiah to sin so that basically the Sanballat and Tobiah could slander Nehemiah's name. So Nehemiah was facing a lot of opposition, both from outside of his city and inside. This brings us to a really important section, although a short section in verses 15 through 16. The walls of Jerusalem are finally completed. So persevering through his many trials, Nehemiah and his men finally finished the walls of Jerusalem just 52 days after they started working. So all of this time since he's arrived in 444 BC till now, the walls are complete. It's just 52 days. So he's really motivated these people to work hard to accomplish this great achievement. When the nations surrounding Judah heard the news that everything had been completed, they perceived that God was with the Jews and that he was the ally of Nehemiah. And the final bit of this section is Nehemiah recording Tobiah's influence in the city in verses 17 through 19. The chapter concludes with a statement about Tobiah, who of course is Nehemiah's enemy. Tobiah apparently had many connections within the city of Jerusalem, and he had some connections through a marriage. And he had many allies who would actually go to Nehemiah and speak very well of Tobiah. Tobiah continued to send Nehemiah threatening letters even after the walls were finished. So now that the walls are finished, the opposition doesn't just dissipate, still lingering around. And so this is something that they're going to have to deal with. Now let's go down and finish up our study today with an application. One of the things that I've really admired about Nehemiah as we've studied these last few chapters is his perseverance. He set his mind to completing a task that he really believed had God's blessing, and he was determined to plow through any opposition that he encountered that was going to stand in the way of completing that job. As we mentioned, he faced opposition both from the inside and the outside, yet his resolve was unbreakable. And no doubt that was also because God was there helping him and strengthening him. This is a good application for me personally. Sometimes I find that I nearly get knocked off course whenever I hit the slightest roadblock. One little friction point can cause me to question my whole direction, even if I believe that I started down that path with God's blessing. You run into a few little difficulties and all of a sudden you start questioning everything that you're doing and thinking, well, maybe I should be doing something else. Now, reevaluating our course in life, that's a good thing, but I think there are times when we know that we are doing and trying to accomplish something good that we just need to put our heads down and plow through obstructions. It's important to remember that not every hindrance that we face is God trying to redirect us. Sometimes those hindrances come from the devil, from modern-day Sanballats and Tobiahs, who are trying to keep us from finishing the good work that we started for the Lord. I hope this study in Nehemiah chapter 6 has been helpful to you, and maybe you're like me where, that application really hits home. And Nehemiah sets a good example for some of us who are always questioning, is this God, sending me in a different direction? Maybe I should quit and start something new. Those ideas are always floating around in my head. Sometimes I just need to be more like Nehemiah. But until next time, I hope you have a fantastic day. And Lord willing, we'll be back tomorrow to talk about Nehemiah 7.